I found my dad's work trip bag, and inside was a baby onesie addressed to another woman. I never thought a single glance into my dad's black duffel bag could flip my entire life upside down. I was just looking for a spare charger. He'd mentioned he had an extra one in there, and since my phone was about to die, I figured it was no big deal. But as soon as I unzipped the top pocket, I saw this tiny white garment poking out. At first, I couldn't process what it was, but when I pulled it out into the light, my heart basically stopped. It was a baby onesie, neatly folded with a pink bow pinned to it. And there was a card attached, the envelope scrawled with the words, "For my Richard," signed by a name I didn't recognize, Anna. I'm Dana, by the way, and I'm 17. I live with my mom, Sarah, and my dad, Richard, in what I'd always thought was a pretty normal suburban family setup somewhere in Pennsylvania. My dad's an engineer who travels a ton for work, which never seemed weird before. It was just how things were. Growing up, he'd be gone for a few days here and there, always bringing back souvenirs from random airports or postcards from whichever city he claimed he'd visited. I didn't question it because why would I? Anyway, seeing that baby onesie was like being struck by lightning. The design on the front said "Daddy's Little Girl," with tiny footprints printed in pastel colors. The card underneath it was sealed, but on the envelope, right beneath the "For my Richard," there was this little heart doodle. My hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The rational side of me thought, maybe it's just a gift for a coworker's baby shower. But that name, Anna, really threw me off. My mom's name is Sarah, obviously, and I'd never heard Dad mention an Anna in all my life. At first, I genuinely wondered if I was jumping to conclusions. But then something clicked in my brain. A few months prior, I'd spotted a random charge on my dad's credit card statement for a boutique baby store. I remember asking him about it in passing, thinking maybe he'd bought a gift for a coworker or one of my cousins who'd recently had a baby. He brushed me off, said it was a coworker thing, and changed the subject. I hadn't thought twice about it. But now, I found myself staring at actual evidence that Dad might be living some double life. It felt ridiculous to even think that. He and Mom had been together for over 20 years. Always seemed solid. No major fights besides the usual stuff about finances or what to do on vacation. But as I stood there, alone in our living room, my heart pounding, I realized something might be terribly wrong. I panicked and shoved the onesie and the card back into his bag, but my mind was already spiraling out of control. Was he cheating on Mom? Was there some woman named Anna who was pregnant with his baby? Was Dad secretly starting a new family somewhere else? My stomach churned so badly I thought I might throw up. I zipped the bag, put it exactly how I found it, and basically sprinted to my room. I locked the door and just sat on my bed, hugging my knees, trying not to hyperventilate. A million thoughts tore through me. Could this be an innocent mix-up? Probably not, for my Richard sounded pretty romantic. Maybe Dad was just, I don't know, helping out a friend? But that made zero sense, especially with the envelope covered in hearts. My head felt hot, my palms sweaty. I always admired my dad. He was the kind of person who never missed my soccer games, except when he had these so-called business trips, who taught me how to fix my bike chain, who gave the cheesiest yet funniest pep talks about being a good person. Now I had a horrifying suspicion that the man I idolized was a fraud. Later that night, Dad came home looking a bit tired. Mom was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner, and I was on the couch, my heart racing every time he moved. He smiled at me like everything was totally normal. "Hey, kiddo," he said, ruffling my hair a bit as he walked by. I forced a smile, trying not to look guilty. When he disappeared into the hallway, presumably heading upstairs to put away his bag, I held my breath. Was he going to notice I'd touched it? I didn't hear any shouts or frantic footsteps. No angry confrontation about me snooping in his stuff. He went to the kitchen, kissed Mom on the cheek, and started talking about his day. I listened from a distance, dumbfounded at how normal his voice sounded. Part of me was furious. If what I suspected was true, how could he be so casual, so affectionate with Mom, as if everything was fine? I lost my appetite, pretended I had a stomachache, which wasn't far from the truth, and went to bed early. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I pictured that baby outfit. By morning, I decided I needed to do something to confirm my suspicions. But what? I considered talking to Mom, but what if I was wrong? What if I told her some crazy assumption and shattered her trust in Dad, only to find out it was a misunderstanding? The risk seemed too big. Instead, I confided in my best friend, Kelly, that morning at school. We'd been friends since 5th grade, so if there was anyone I could trust, it was her. We sat together on the bleachers before first period, trying to be inconspicuous as other kids milled around. I explained everything in a whispered rush, my hands shaking as I spoke. Kelly's eyes got huge and she clapped a hand over her mouth. Oh my God, Dana, she breathed. That's insane. Are you sure it's really what you think it is? I shrugged helplessly. No, I'm not sure of anything, but what else could it be? Kelly's expression was grim. You gotta find out more. Could you, I don't know, check his phone? Or see if he has pictures or messages somewhere? I winced. I hated the idea of snooping through my dad's private stuff, but I also couldn't just sit there and pretend everything was normal. So we formed a rough plan. Next time I had the chance, I'd take a look at his phone or his laptop. I never thought I'd stoop to that level. But the alternative was confronting him and risking him shutting me down or lying to me outright. That night, Dad said he had to catch up on some emails, so he was in his study with the door half closed. Mom was in the backyard watering her tomato plants. She had this new hobby of growing organic produce, and it took a lot of her free time. Seizing the opportunity, I crept downstairs and lingered outside Dad's study. He was muttering something, sounded frustrated, and I heard him moving around. I guess he stepped out for a bathroom break because suddenly the chair squeaked, and I heard footsteps heading down the hall. My heart hammered. I peeked in. The laptop was still on, the screen unlocked. Without thinking too hard, I tiptoed in, glancing at the hallway to be sure he wasn't about to come back. The email browser was open and I saw an inbox full of messages. My eyes zeroed in on a particular thread marked Anna. She'd emailed him quite a bit, it seemed. My hand shook as I clicked on the most recent one. Her message started with, "Hey baby, just got back from my appointment. Everything looks good. Doctor says she's growing perfectly." She included a couple of ultrasound attachments, which I stared at in stunned disbelief. It was definitely a baby in those images, still curled up, a fuzzy black and white shape. She wrote, "Hope you can visit soon. I miss you. Can't wait for our little girl to meet her daddy." My chest constricted so tight I almost couldn't breathe. That was it. There was no room for misinterpretation now. Anna was pregnant with my dad's baby, a baby girl. My head spun, tears stabbing my eyes. The date on the email showed it was sent just 2 days ago. He'd read it but not replied yet, at least not from his computer. Before I could read further, I heard a flush from the hallway bathroom. I panicked, closed the email, and rushed out as quietly as I could. My pulse roared in my ears as I hurried up the stairs to my room, tears already burning my face. I flung myself onto my bed, burying my face in my pillow to keep from screaming. It was real. Dad was cheating on Mom, and this Anna person was carrying his child. My heart ached so badly I couldn't even process the betrayal. All I could think was how much it would destroy my mother if she found out. And, inevitably, she'd have to find out. How long did Dad think he could hide a whole baby? I barely spoke during dinner, and Mom noticed. She asked if I was feeling sick again. Dad glanced at me a few times with a concerned expression, but I avoided his gaze. How could he sit there, calmly eating spaghetti and cracking a dumb joke about the sauce when he had another woman across the state, or wherever she was, carrying his child? The hypocrisy boiled my blood. I felt nauseous just being near him. Over the next few days, I tried to keep it together, but inside, I was a wreck. Kelly urged me to confront him, or at least confide in my mom, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I guess I was terrified of the fallout. Mom had always been gentle, warm, and so trusting of Dad. The thought of seeing her face when she discovered he'd broken that trust so completely, it kept me up at night. But I couldn't hide it forever. One evening, I overheard Mom and Dad arguing in hushed tones. I caught the words, appointment, and time off, which set every alarm bell ringing in my head. I went downstairs as casually as I could, half expecting them to be yelling, but they went silent the moment I walked in. Mom glanced at me with a tired smile and said everything was fine, but her eyes were red. Dad excused himself to the living room, leaving Mom alone by the kitchen sink. She looked so sad, drying her hands on a dish towel with trembling fingers. My heart pounded. Could it be she already suspected something? I inched over to her. "Mom, are you okay? You look upset." She took a deep breath, trying to smile. "It's just, your dad seems distracted lately. He's traveling more often than usual, and when he's home, he's on edge. Maybe he's stressed about work. I don't know." So, I wanted to tell her right then, but I couldn't. My lips felt glued shut. So I just nodded and forced out a quiet, "It'll be okay, Mom," before heading back to my room. Later that night, I heard Dad rummaging around, probably packing for yet another trip. My stomach flipped at the thought that he might actually be going to see Anna. The breaking point came a week later. Dad claimed he had to leave for a conference in Chicago. Mom was going to stay with her sister for a couple of days. Her sister had just had surgery, so she wanted to help out. That left me alone in the house one night, something that used to feel normal but now felt suffocating. Around 8 p. I realized Dad had forgotten his laptop charger on the dining room table. I stared at it for a few minutes. my mind racing with the temptation to rummage through more of his things, see if there was anything else that would tell me exactly what was going on. I went upstairs to his closet, looking for a smaller travel bag he sometimes used for weekend trips. Maybe I was hoping to find more clues. Instead, I found a cardboard box tucked behind some shoes. And inside that box, I discovered a stack of ultrasound prints with Anna's name labeled on each. There were doctor's notes, a few photographs of Dad and Anna together, at what looked like a baby shower. She had a round belly, and he stood behind her with his hands protectively on it, both smiling like they were proud parents. I almost couldn't stand up. It felt like the floor was tilting. This was so blatant, so real. Not just an affair, but a full-blown relationship. Clutching one of the photos, I sank onto the bed, sobbing until my throat felt raw. This time, there was no more delaying it. Mom had to know. She deserved to know what Dad was doing behind her back. My hands trembled as I texted Kelly. "I have proof. I'm telling Mom. I can't hide it anymore." She replied right away, offering support, telling me to call her if I needed to. When Mom came home the next afternoon, I felt sick to my stomach. I'd been up all night practicing how I'd tell her. She walked in the door looking tired but relieved to see me. "Hey, honey," she said, setting her overnight bag down. I forced a shaky smile and motioned for her to sit with me in the living room. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure she could hear it. The second she saw my face, her expression fell. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. I couldn't speak. I just reached for the box I'd placed on the coffee table, the one containing the ultrasound prints and photos. Mom looked confused, then opened it. As she started flipping through the pictures, the color drained from her face. She lifted one ultrasound image and stared at it, tears brimming in her eyes, her gaze flicking to the photo of Dad cradling Anna's belly. I heard her sharp intake of breath. "Dana, what is this?" she whispered. My own tears welled up again. "I'm sorry, Mom. I found them in Dad's closet. It looks like he has another woman, and she's pregnant with his child." For a moment, she just sat there, utterly silent. Then her face contorted in heartbreak. "No," she murmured. "This can't be. Your dad wouldn't." She cut herself off, reading the label on one of the ultrasound prints. Anna's name, the date, the clinic, all of it spelled out. "Oh my God," she gasped, covering her mouth with a trembling hand. I burst into tears. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I didn't know how to tell you." She set the pictures aside, pulling me into a tight hug, both of us sobbing. I'd never seen her so devastated, and it broke something in me that I couldn't fix. We must have sat there crying for half an hour, the clock ticking in the background, a grim reminder that Dad was supposed to be gone for days. At one point, Mom stood abruptly, her eyes red but determined. "I need to call him," she said, her voice shaking with a mix of rage and sorrow. She tried his cell, but it went straight to voicemail. She left a message that was short and trembling. "Richard, call me back the second you get this. We need to talk." Then she sank onto the couch again, burying her face in her hands, shoulders shaking. I had no words to comfort her, so I just stayed close, feeling helpless. Late that night, Dad finally called back. Mom put it on speaker and I hovered by her side, my heart hammering. "Sarah, what's going on?" he asked, sounding a bit tense. Mom's voice came out low and broken. "Stop lying to me. I know about Anna. I know about the baby." He was silent for so long I wondered if the call had dropped. When he finally spoke, his voice was shaky. I can explain," he said, but he offered no immediate explanation. Mom let out a ragged breath. "There's nothing to explain. I have photos, ultrasound prints. You're smiling in them, Richard. You look pretty happy for a man who's lying to his wife." "Aw." Dad stammered something about wanting to talk in person, how he never meant to hurt us, but Mom was practically seething. "I want you to come home right now," she said. "I don't care about your conference. Book the next flight, or don't bother coming back at all." She hung up before he could respond. I barely slept that night, staying beside Mom as she sobbed quietly in her room. She kept repeating, "I can't believe he did this," over and over, like she was in shock. I felt rage coiling in my gut. How dare Dad reduce our strong, loving mother to this trembling mess? It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. Dad arrived the following evening, looking like a ghost of himself. His hair was disheveled, eyes bloodshot. Mom immediately confronted him, brandishing the photos. I stood in the corner, my arms wrapped around myself, tears in my eyes. Dad tried to reach for Mom's hand, but she jerked away. "Just tell me one thing," she demanded, voice trembling. "Is that child yours?" He lowered his head, nodding. "Yes," he whispered. "I'm sorry. I never meant—" She cut him off, her voice cracking. "How long has this been going on?" He swallowed. "About a year," he finally admitted. I met Anna at a conference. It was just supposed to be just a fling. Then she told me she was pregnant, and I panicked. I I didn't know what to do. Aha. Mom let out a bitter laugh, tears rolling down her cheeks. So you decided to keep lying to me and to our daughter? Did you really think you could hide a baby forever? He stepped toward her, tears in his own eyes. Sarah, please. I love you. I love Dana. I'm so sorry I messed everything up. My anger surged. I spoke up, my voice trembling. Then why did you do it at all? I demanded, tears burning my eyes. You've destroyed our family. That Dad looked at me, a broken expression on his face. I know, and I hate myself for it, he murmured. You don't understand how many times I wanted to come clean. You should have, Mom spat, turning away from him. You should have come clean the second you knew instead of betraying us like this. No one yelled. It was all tearful, raw, and quiet. In some ways, that felt even worse than if they had screamed at each other. Dad tried to apologize again, but Mom left the room, slamming the bedroom door behind her. I followed her a few minutes later, sitting on the edge of the bed, watching her cry into her pillow. She asked me to stay with her, so I did, quietly rubbing her back until her sobs turned into exhausted silence. The days that followed were the worst I've ever experienced. Mom barely spoke to Dad except for a few clipped words about needing space. Dad kept trying to talk to me, but I couldn't handle looking at him. Every time I saw his face, I pictured him smiling in those baby shower photos next to Anna. Eventually, Mom packed a bag and went to stay at her sister's for a few weeks. She told me I could choose whether to come with her or stay at the house with Dad. As angry as I was at him, I wasn't ready to uproot my entire life. Plus, I had school and my aunt's place was too far away. So I stayed, though I avoided Dad like the plague. We barely exchanged a handful of words each day. He moved into the guest room, and I heard him pacing at night, making phone calls in hushed tones. Probably calling Anna, I thought bitterly. Sometimes I'd hear him crying softly too, which twisted my insides in a weird way. I still loved him as my dad, but I hated what he'd done. The betrayal was so huge I wasn't sure if anything could fix it. Mom was gone for nearly a month, and in that time, Dad tried several times to see Anna's baby appointments. I knew because I saw a note on the fridge reminding him of dates and times, along with the clinic's address. He might have tried to hide it, but I guess his mind was all over the place. I stared at that note, feeling a stab of pain. He was actively involved in planning for a baby that wasn't my mom's, that wasn't a half-sibling I'd even known about until I opened that cursed duffel bag. When Mom came back to discuss everything, it ended in a massive argument between them. She asked if he wanted to be with Anna, if he loved her, or if it was just about the child. He claimed it was complicated, that he was torn. In the end, Mom said she couldn't trust him, not after such an elaborate lie and the fact that a child was coming who would always link him to Anna. I don't blame her. They started talking about separation. I was reeling the whole time, trying to focus on finishing my junior year of high school without breaking down. Kelly was my rock. She listened to me vent and cry. I felt an odd guilt, like if I hadn't opened that bag, maybe we'd still be a happy family, at least on the surface. Of course, that was irrational. Dad's secret would have come out eventually, but I still wrestled with the timing. Over the following months, Dad officially moved out to an apartment and Mom filed for divorce. It was surreal, watching lawyers handle what I thought was an unbreakable marriage. Dad wanted partial custody of me until I turned 18, but I told both him and Mom that I'd stay with Mom. Legally, I could choose. He cried when I said that, but he didn't argue. Deep down, I think he knew he'd lost any trust I had in him. Anna's baby was born a couple of months after that. A girl, apparently healthy. Dad texted me a photo from the hospital, saying he hoped one day I'd meet my half-sister. I stared at that photo for a long time, seeing this tiny, innocent baby in Anna's arms, Dad standing beside her. I felt such a rush of conflicting emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness, weird protectiveness. This baby was flesh and blood related to me. But I couldn't bring myself to reply to his message. Things haven't magically resolved. Mom's still heartbroken, though she's trying to move forward with her life. She got a job at a local bakery to fill her time, and I swear she's never been busier or more determined to do something new. She tries to smile for me, but I know she's broken inside. Dad is living in his apartment, apparently trying to be involved with the new baby. Once in a while, he calls me or texts, asking if I want to hang out, but I'm not sure how to navigate that. My heart aches whenever I think about how much has changed. Sometimes I blame him for everything. Sometimes I blame Anna, even though I don't know her side of the story. Mostly, I just feel hurt and confused. My once stable family is shattered. I see other dads picking up their kids from school or cheering at soccer matches, and I remember a time when Dad did that for me without any hint of a double life. It's like I lost the father I knew and got stuck with someone I barely recognize. Mom and I are in therapy now, trying to process all this, and it's helping a bit. I'm learning how to navigate the anger, the grief, the betrayal. The therapist keeps reminding me that I can't control Dad's choices, only how I respond to them. It's hard, though. Some nights, I lie awake replaying old memories. Christmas mornings, beach vacations, inside jokes. And it's so painful realizing he was capable of lying to us so completely. A part of me wonders if I'll ever have a relationship with that half-sister. I feel guilty hating her or blaming her, because she's just a baby. She didn't ask to be born into this mess. But right now, the wound is too raw. If I were to see her in person, I think I'd just break down. Maybe years down the line, when I'm older and I've moved on, I'll be able to accept her. Maybe I'll be able to see Dad without feeling like I'm going to burst into tears or scream. But that day isn't today. Sometimes I think back to the moment when I unzipped his bag and saw that tiny onesie. It was such an unassuming, innocent-looking thing. A piece of clothing for a baby who was about to dismantle the life I thought I had. If I could rewind time, I'd almost prefer not to have known. But then again, living in ignorance wouldn't have changed the reality. Dad would still have had another family behind our backs. At least now, it's in the open and we can try to move forward somehow. That's pretty much where things stand. My parents are divorcing, my dad has a new baby with another woman, and I'm stuck in this swirl of emotions. Anger, betrayal, confusion, and heartbreak. Mom and I are slowly adjusting, but it's going to be a long process. If there's anything I've learned, it's that secrets have a way of coming out. No matter how carefully they're hidden, and the consequences can be devastating. I'm still picking up the pieces, still figuring out how to trust again, and honestly, I don't know what the future holds for my family. All I know is that the day I opened that bag, my life changed forever, and I'll never look at my dad the same way again.